You ever finish a lesson and you realize you spent more time keeping someone on task than actually teaching them music? If that keeps happening, you're not teaching, you're babysitting. There's a very clear reason why, and it has nothing to do with you being a bad teacher. In this video, we'll break down why this happens and how choosing the right type of student instantly changes the entire teaching experience. You know that feeling when you're supposed to be teaching music, but it just turns into 30 minutes of trying to keep someone focused. You're repeating the same things every week. You're trying to motivate someone who clearly doesn't want to be there. You're managing their energy more than teaching anything useful, and by the end, you're exhausted instead of fulfilled. That babysitting feeling doesn't come from bad students. It comes from teaching people who need something completely different from what you're naturally good at. When a student's needs don't match your strengths, every lesson becomes a bit of a battle, right? You're trying to teach music, but they need a completely different version of you. That mismatch is exactly why your teaching feels harder than it should. And the reason it keeps happening is simple. You haven't defined who your lessons are actually for. And if you've ever taught in a school, you already know what this mismatch feels like because that's where it shows up the most. If you've ever taught in a school, you already know what this feels like, right? You show up to teach, but half the kids didn't choose to be there, right? You get assigned random students you've never met, and you're trying to motivate people who don't necessarily care, right? In a noisy room with constant interruptions and just 30 minutes to make something stick. On top of that, often the pay is low, the structure is rigid, parents aren't involved as much as they should be, and you have almost no control over how you teach or who you teach. And after a while, you start believing that this is what teaching is: exhausting, underpaid, and basically babysitting, like we said. But that's not teaching. That's teaching with zero choice over the students you work with. And the only way out of that babysitting dynamic is to understand the different types of students you could be teaching, because each group creates a completely different experience. Which is why you need to know the 4 main categories of music students. When you strip it back, there are 4 main types of students, okay? And each one needs something different from you, okay? First, we've got kids, right? They need structure, they need patience, they need routines, and sometimes behavior management. You're also working with their parents as much as the student. Then you have adult beginners, okay? They need more encouragement, simple wins, clarity, and repetition. They want to feel like they're finally playing real music and that they're not stuck doing exercises. Then you have intermediates, right? They need direction and accountability. They can play a bit, but not necessarily as confidently as they want. They're relying on you to help them break through plateaus and build a more kind of musical flow. Then you have advanced and more professional musicians, right? They need specific and honest feedback, right? They already play at a high level. They just need someone who understands the exact problems they're trying to solve and provide some accountability with the teaching. Now, each of these categories creates a totally different teaching experience. And here's something no one really says out loud, right? If teaching kids feels like babysitting, you don't have to teach kids. You're not obligated to teach every category, right? You get to choose the one that actually fits the way you teach. And in fact, the mistake most teachers make is trying to jump between all of these categories, right? That's exactly what creates this dynamic that you're constantly switching the type of teacher you need to be, and there's no consistency. If you want to take control of your teaching and stop it feeling like babysitting, you have to choose one of these categories to focus on. Now, if you don't do this, if you try to teach all 4 categories at once, your lessons will always feel unpredictable, okay? 1 hour, you're an early childhood teacher, okay? The next, you're coaching an adult beginner, and suddenly you're expected to give like advanced level feedback to them, right? That constant switching is what makes teaching feel chaotic, right? It's not the students, it's that mismatch. When you choose one of these categories, everything gets easier. Your lessons become smoother, your planning becomes simpler, your expectations stay consistent, and you attract the exact type of student you actually want to work with. And here's the part most musicians get completely wrong. Narrowing down doesn't limit you. Narrowing down is what unlocks better And here's the part most musicians get completely wrong. Narrowing down doesn't limit you. Narrowing down is what unlocks more committed students, better results, and better income. Because every category has way more demand than you think. There is an abundance of adult beginners. There is an abundance of intermediate players stuck in plateaus. There's an abundance of advanced players looking for specific guidance. And yes, an abundance of parents who will happily pay for structured quality lessons for their kids. When your teaching is aimed at one of these groups, they recognize themselves immediately. They take lessons more seriously. They practice more consistently, and they stick around longer. Narrowing down doesn't reduce your options. It filters out the babysitting dynamic and pulls in students who actually want to be there. So the real question is, how do you choose the category that fits you best? Choosing your category isn't about guessing or trying to predict necessarily even where the money is. It's about being honest about where you do your best work, right? Start with your energy first. Who drains you? Who energizes you? If teaching kids leaves you wrecked, that's your answer, right? If helping intermediates break plateaus lights you up and fires you up, then do that, right? Then you look at results, right? Which group do you consistently help make real progress? Not the group you wish you were great at, the group you are already getting wins with. The next is experience, right? Your own playing ability and your own journey, they do matter, right? If you spent years developing advanced skills, you'll naturally be better with players who need those skills, right? But if you haven't, if you're just getting started in the teaching game, well, advanced players is probably not going to be your lane, and that's totally fine. The other factor is your patience as well. Some categories require a totally different temperament. Kids need patience, structure, and a steady presence, okay? And as far as patience goes, my mom is a perfect example of this. She's been a career music teacher for decades, teaching beginner violinists, kids, right? And she loves it. She must have the patience of a monk, okay? And if that's you, that's amazing. Lean into that. If you want to teach kids and you've got the patience for it, do it. But if it isn't, don't force yourself into a category that doesn't fit. Finally, look at the kind of teaching that actually feels good to you, right? Which group makes lessons fly by instead of dragging on? That feeling is going to matter more than anything else. Pick the category where you can reliably help people get results. That's the category that will reward you the most in progress, in energy, and in income. Once you choose a single category to focus on, everything gets easier. Your lessons feel smoother, your planning becomes more predictable. The students who reach out actually want the type of help that you're good at giving. And that babysitting feeling completely disappears because you're finally teaching people whose needs match your strengths. This is the point where teaching stops feeling like a grind and starts feeling enjoyable again. And once you've chosen your category, the next step is understanding what the best students inside that category actually care about, because that's what makes the motivated ones show up. And in this video here, I'll show you exactly how to learn and understand what serious students want and how to talk about your teaching in a way that attracts them without chasing anyone.